All right, part three of chapter 28. It's the end. Um, Protists are very diverse. We've talked about this a lot. Another important thing to remember is that they play very key roles in lots of different ecological communities. They're found all over the place. They are most often found, though, in places where we find water, so aquatic or more moist terrestrial environments. And again, the reason for that is that a lot of them move around with flagella, and that would be very difficult to do on a dry land environment. So watery and moist land environments will be where we find them primarily. Some of them inside of other organisms, right? We talked about how some of them are parasites. So they do play two key roles in their habitats, that of a symbiont, so again, a helper in their environment, and that of producers. So symbiotic protists, some of them are going to be helpful to their host and not harmful like a parasite. So a couple different examples of protists that act as symbionts, meaning they are beneficial, are dinoflagellates. So dinoflagellates that nourish coral polyps, and these dinoflagellates help these coral polyps to build reefs. So again, we know coral reefs are hugely important, very, very essential for aquatic environments, ocean environments. Coral reefs are nurseries for so many other species. And we know that these coral reefs are essential for maintaining diversity in life in oceans. So these dinoflagellates help them to do that. Another example of a symbiotic protist would be wood digesting protists that live inside the gut of termites. So this is very interesting, and I found a good little video that we can watch for this to talk about how they work in a symbiotic way.
Are you nervous?
A little.
And action! Bright things ahead, darling. Brightness and joy.
I've got plans.
Everything feels better after a cup of tea.
Now talking.
I just want to be right here in this moment with you.
You're going to be a bigger star than ever.
This is good news for all of us.
Best episode ever.
Do you ever have those days when you just can't stop eating? What's up with that? And more importantly, what happens to all that food?
This is digestion. Food matter enters one end of the tube. Along the way, bigger pieces of food are broken down into smaller ones, dissolved, and nutrients and energy-bearing molecules are absorbed. The rest is expended.
All right. But eating is actually much more complicated than that, and animals typically cannot do it alone, especially when it comes to plants. Plants consist of a complex range of carbohydrates, and we typically lack the enzymes necessary to break all that down. And so we need help. And we get that help from microbes. They are masters of biochemistry. They do have the right enzymes necessary to digest something like this, which is why the digestive tracts of many animals are full of microbes. When we eat, they help us to digest the indigestible, to break down our food so that we can get nutrients from it. These kinds of partnerships go back hundreds of millions of years, and they have shaped the evolution of the animal digestive system.
I think we're learning more and more that we rely on gut microbes to help us digest our food.
This is Jining Zhang from Princeton University.
I'm an environmental microbiologist, but within that sort of very vague umbrella term, I would say I'm a microbe person.
Hey, me too.
I think of the microbes as the underdogs in our world. They were the first life forms on Earth, and I'm sure they're going to be the last ones on Earth. So I'm really interested in just understanding how they work, why they do the things they do. For example, why are they so important for termite guts?
Well, I imagine that eating wood would require some serious teamwork.
Yes, yeah. Termites and their gut microbes are really two sides of the coin. The termites have their gut microbes to help them do the job of living on and feeding on a very difficult to digest food.
But the process begins with a termite and its jaws.
So you start with the termite chomping on the wood and breaking into small particles. They're just basically macerating the wood into like sawdust.
The bits of wood are the bright brown chunks in this microscope video of the guts of a termite. The large clear blobs are protists. They are microbes, but their complex cells are more similar to our own than to bacteria. These protists engulf the wood particles and then get to work digesting them.
The wood is broken down into little molecules to access the yummy sugars, which can be used ultimately to feed the termite.
Right, and everyone, the microbes and the termite itself, everyone got your meal.
Everybody gets fed. Everybody does does their fair share of work, let's say.
And so, how does that partnership evolve?
It turns out that termites actually evolved from a cockroach, an omnivorous cockroach, like the ones you might find in your house.
Oh, right, like the ones I try unsuccessfully to kill.
I guess it was in the Jurassic about 150 million years ago. It turns out that the social behavior of the cockroaches allowed these omnivorous cockroaches to basically take advantage of another food source, in a very abundant food source, that being wood. These, let's say, wood-feeding cockroaches and then termites, they're able to inoculate their young with gut microbes. So this basically, you can think of them as being able to transfer the potential to eat wood to the next generation, and so forth and so forth and so forth.
So you're saying that they're passing along the microbes that they need to digest wood through social behavior?
Yes, enabled by a social behavior. Yes, exactly.
And how exactly do termites do social?
So how do they do that? Oh, it's a term that's called, the technical term is called proctodeal trophallaxis. And basically it's,
So...
like is there a doctor, proctologist? No.
Proctologist?
That. Proctodeal trophallaxis.
Right, and trophallaxis means when animals feed with regurgitated fluids. So...
I guess you want me to say the word but?
I am trying to get you to say but. That is exactly what I'm trying to do. So really, the way in which termites pass on these microbes from one to another is through butt licking.
Exactly. So there's a little blob of the gut fluid that comes out from the end, the posterior of one termite, and another termite, some of them, like some of the juvenile termites, will eat that. And it's full of nutritious, tasty, microbes in there, and
which allow them to digest wood. So really, this is a superpower bestowed by intergenerational butt licking.
Yes, exactly. The fact is that one organism can't do everything, right? Just like one person can't do everything. At some point, you have to outsource some of the functions.
Very true, like ordering takeout.
All right. So very interesting, right? So symbiotic relationships with protists and their host. We also know, we already talked about that some protists are parasitic. So we talked about Plasmodium that causes malaria using Homo sapiens or humans and mosquitoes as hosts. The red tide we talked about as well. So dinoflagellate that causes red tide and fish death, also kills other organisms in oceans as well. There is a protus that causes sudden oak death. Here's a picture of some oak trees that are killed by protus in California. And then the potato late blight, which contributed to the Irish famine in the 19th century. This is actually really important culturally and for movement of people. So a good example of human geography. So the Protus P. infestans actually killed off a huge amount of the potatoes that were growing in Ireland at the time. So we had a huge amount of immigration to Canada and the United States when this happened, because people in Ireland were not able to feed their families. So very interesting. Let's watch this very quickly.
Late blight of potato, caused by the oomycete Phytophthora infestans, is one of the most serious diseases affecting potato crops worldwide. The primary symptoms of Phytophthora infestans infection are brown lesions at the base of the stem, in the leaf axils, and on the leaves. In humid weather, this damage spreads rapidly. On the underside of the leaves, a typical whitish growth of the pathogen can be seen. It consists of a dense aggregation of branched hyphae, sporangiophores, bearing lemon-shaped sporangia, the reproductive organs of Phytophthora infestans. When picked up by the wind, countless sporangia are spread throughout the crop and far beyond it. Sporangia that land on a potato leaf when the weather is damp and warm often germinate by forming a germ tube. This process is called direct germination. At lower temperatures, indirect germination prevails. Motile zoospores are released. After attaching to the leaf surface, they transform into roundish cysts. The cysts germinate by forming a germ tube. From its tip, an infection hypha enters the interior of the leaf. A mycelium forms. Its hyphae spread between the leaf cells. With the help of finger-like haustoria, the parasite draws nutrients from the cells of its host plant. The damaged cells die off, and the mycelium spreads further into neighboring leaf tissue that is still alive. Thus, green leaf area is increasingly lost. From hyphae on the edge of the damaged leaf tissue, sporangiophores develop, growing out of the leaf through stomata, bearing a new generation of sporangia ready to be spread by wind or rain. This cycle of sporangial dissemination, release of zoospores, infection of a host plant, mycelium formation in the leaf, and sporulation can continue repeating, especially if weather conditions are moist. Infection pressure increases exponentially, and more plants show the typical late blight symptoms. The damaged leaf area increases rapidly from day to day. Often, the stems with dead leaves hanging from them are all that remain. The tubers remain small, but the risk of yield loss is far higher if sporangia are washed into the soil by rain. The zoospores released from the sporangia move between the soil particles and thus reach the surface of the tubers. They often infect the tubers through natural openings in their skin. In storage, tubers infected by Phytophthora infestans are recognized by irregular blue-gray spots on their surfaces. With time, these spots sink in slightly. Often, infected tubers are additionally colonized by soft rot bacteria.
So that's just showing you how that moves between different organisms. Again, hugely impactful in terms of history, right? Historical movement of people from Ireland. Also, there was a big migration of people from Scotland at the same time over to Canada and the United States as well. Our founder, David Sinclair, actually his parents moved from Scotland when he was a baby to Canada, and he lived in Canada while he was young, and then moved to the Dayton, Ohio area when he was a young adult, and then founded Sinclair quite a long time ago. So over 137 years ago is when Sinclair founded our great institution. Okay, so many protists, we said again, protists can be symbiotic with their host, they can be parasitic, but we also know that many protists are very important producers that will obtain energy from the sun, and they're able to convert carbon dioxide molecules to organic compounds. So these photosynthetic protists and prokaryotes are the main producers that we find in aquatic communities. Photosynthetic protists are limited by their nutrients. So again, this is the idea where we keep them in check with the numbers, but these protist populations can explode when limiting nutrients are added. So again, when the ecosystem is changed in some way, that's going to cause an explosion of one thing. If you have an explosion of one part of an ecosystem, then it's going to impact the others. So this is just showing you what we would find in an aquatic ecosystem. Prokaryotic producers. So again, these would be bacterial cells that would be performing photosynthesis. Protist producers, again, either performing photosynthesis or performing chemo. These are chemoautotrophs, so they're performing a variation of photosynthesis that doesn't use light, but still is producing sugars. Carnivorous plankton, herbivorous plankton, here's other consumers. You can see that this describes what looks like a food web. We'll talk more about these when we get to our ecosystem chapters at the end of our semester, but we can see that all of these play a role in influencing and supporting the others. So very, very important that protists be maintained as part of the ecosystem. What we've seen is that, again, changing the environment will have an effect on the living organisms in that environment. So if we talk about global warming and climate change, the biomass of the photosynthetic protists has declined as sea surface temperature has increased. So again, the temperatures are rising, we know, in the air, but also in the water. Growth of phytoplankton communities relies on the nutrients delivered from the bottom of the ocean through this upwelling process. And the warm surface water acts as a barrier to upwelling. So again, this is a problem in terms of maintaining natural protist and producer communities in the oceans. If the sea surface temperature continues to warm due to climate change, you're going to have very big effects on all of these things. So marine ecosystems, the seas, the oceans, fishery yields will go down dramatically. This has already been a major problem due to overfishing. And then just the overall global carbon cycle will be affected as well if we think about these changes. And this is showing you chlorophyll change. This chlorophyll change is a measure of the photosynthetic organisms, whether they be protists and or bacterial, cyanobacteria. You can see again that most oceans have had a decrease in the number of photosynthetic organisms over time, and this corresponds directly to increasing sea surface temperatures. So again, this is a problem when we think about overall what's going to be happening. So just another consideration that we need to think about when we're thinking about changing what we're doing and trying to slow the process of global climate change. All right, that is the end of chapter 28. I hope you are having a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.